As Europe lumbered toward all-out war in the 1930s, the two nations became synonymous with the fascist ideology that was about to spread like wildfire through the continent: Nazi Germany and the Kingdom of Italy. While Portugal and Spain embraced autocracy and fascism but remained neutral, and while Romania, Bulgaria, and others contributed to the Axis cause in their own ways, it was the alliance between Germany and Italy that would shape the progress of the war. But this alliance did not last. By 1943, Italy would be on its knees, signing an armistice with the Allied command that September. How would Germany respond? That's what we're going to be exploring in this video. The relationship between Germany and Italy extends long before the unification of the Italian states in 1861 and the German revolutions of the 1840s. The predecessors of both nations had been part of the Holy Roman Empire and had each fought against the expanding Austrian Empire. They had been on opposing sides in the previous war, but this didn't matter. This was a new era, one of National Socialism in Germany and of fascism in Italy. Benito Mussolini, often viewed as an incompetent buffoon by history, had achieved significant political successes in Italy, and this won him the admiration of Adolf Hitler. The two leaders viewed each other warmly and signed the Rome-Berlin Axis Agreement in 1936, followed by the Pact of Steel in 1939. In the summer of 1940, Italy joined the war on the side of the Nazis and even launched their own invasion of France across the Alps before the armistice was declared between Germany and the remaining Vichy French territories. But the cordial relationship quickly became strained. The Italian invasion of Greece in October 1940 stalled and very nearly became a disaster for the Axis power. It was only German intervention in the spring of 1941 that forced the Greek resistors to surrender. 2 years later, Italian forces struggled to contain the threat of the Yugoslav partisans on the Balkan Peninsula, and Germans began making moves behind Italy's backs. The decision to disarm the anti-communist Chechen guerrillas was unpopular with Italian forces that had served alongside these units in the Balkans, and was an example of a relationship at breaking point. It's difficult to say exactly what German soldiers thought of their Italian counterparts. Some certainly believe that Germans generally looked down on Italians, with anecdotal stories emerging from Greece that suggest German forces held Italians in low regard. Ideologically, a close alliance with Italy was always going to be a problem. Italians are not a Germanic people, and so they don't really fit into the ideal of Aryan supremacy espoused by the Nazi leadership. However, historians like James J. Sadkovich have suggested that Italian forces viewed Germans as militarily inferior in some theaters and in some instances, demonstrating a deepening rift between the two Axis powers. By September 1943, the game was very nearly up for Italy as an Axis power. The woeful campaign in Albania and Greece in 1941 had been only the beginning of their military humiliation. In May of 1943, Italy's North African regiments surrendered to the Allies, leaving the nation dangerously exposed to an attack across the Mediterranean. In July, that attack came. The island of Sicily in the south fell in only a few weeks, and the Italian king removed Mussolini from power during a fascist Grand Council meeting on July 25th. On September 3rd, Allied troops landed on the Italian mainland. Now, it really was all over. Marshal Pietro Badoglio, the prime minister installed after Mussolini was deposed, signed an armistice with the Allies that same day. Badoglio and his ministers had been conducting the negotiations in secret. It was the announcement made by Allied Supreme Commander Dwight Eisenhower that forced Badoglio to come clean and admit that the Italians were switching sides. After the armistice, both Prime Minister and King fled, and Italy's military and civilian population were left to decide what to do next. Hardline fascists simply joined up with the Nazis, but more than 1 million men were put into military internment camps. While Germans often treated Allied prisoners of war relatively well, this wasn't true for the Italians in the camps, who were viewed as traitors and treated brutally. A huge number of civilians were also killed in the fighting that followed the armistice. Italy might have left the war, but the war had not left Italy. The fall of Italy was not wholly unexpected for Hitler and the Germans. The Nazi high command had already laid out plans for an invasion of the Italian peninsula to push the Allies back southward should Italy crumble. This was Operation Axis, which was set into motion the same day that Italy fell. Even with the Italians now on their side, Allied progress was slow in Italy, and for a while at least, it seemed like Germany could succeed in halting the advance. As German forces set to disarm the Italians in the north of Italy in the autumn of 1943, resistance groups began to spring up. These Italian guerrilla forces became thorns in the side of the German regular divisions, but could not gain an upper hand against their invaders. In total, more than 1 million Italian soldiers were disarmed during Operation Axis, but perhaps as many as 30,000 died in the brutal fighting that continued after the armistice. Many of these were killed by German forces, but assaults by Romanian troops and even Slovene partisans eager for retribution after the Balkan campaigns of the previous years also claimed Italian lives. The situation for the Germans following the Italian armistice could never be described as good. They may have had some success on the peninsula, but they were fighting a losing battle in the south, and they were becoming dangerously overstretched. As is so often the case in war, this laid the groundwork for atrocities on an often sickening scale. The position of Italian Jews during the Holocaust had been a little better than that of Jews elsewhere in Europe. While Italian fascists complied with the final solution to an extent, Jews weren't systematically deported from Italy under Mussolini. Following the armistice, however, deportations were stepped up. From September 1943 onwards, 8,000 Italian Jews, 20% of Italy's Jewish population, were murdered. But by this point in the war, the Germans harbored a similar hatred for their non-Jewish former allies in Italy too. It's estimated that around 14,000 non-Jewish Italian civilians were murdered by Nazis during the occupation across more than 5,000 individual war crimes. At Martaboto alone, 770 civilians were brutally murdered, along with 560 at Sant'Anna di Stazzema and 335 at Ardiatine. And then there were the Italian soldiers. Disarming didn't just mean disarming, it meant taking prisoners. These prisoners were treated abysmally, and of the 600,000 who were sent to Germany, it is believed that 40,000 did not survive. Despite Hitler's admiration for the Italian system in the 1930s, Germany's wartime relationship with Italy was always a difficult one. Joint operations very rarely went to plan, and Italian military failures made the idea of an equal partnership little more than a fantasy. But still, Germany needed Italy. Without Italy, the southern frontier of Europe was dangerously exposed to Allied forces in North Africa. In the end, even the swiftly deployed Operation Axis was not enough to halt the invasion. Germany would fight on for nearly 2 more years, but the fall of Italy was the first major domino to fall in the Nazi capitulation. The Normandy landings of June 1944 and the fall of Poland to the Red Army in January of 1945 left the Germans cornered, cut off, and with no way out.